Thanks for listening to the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. You can contact the show at twitter.com/DW Groovecast and through Facebook at facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast.
Good evening.
I am warning you right now, if you touch my drums, I will stab you in the neck with a knife.
Ain't a bucket. Ain't a bucket. Mom!
Take it easy. Lower it.
I'm not gonna lower it. I have to do this now.
I don't mind you playing it, but lower it.
Everything get straightened out?
No, we had a problem. I mean, we tried to do everything we could.
What do you mean?
Well, you know what I mean.
Next!
Little trouble there. You're rushing.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah!
John, they said it couldn't be done. We teased them long enough. But we are here with our first interview ever.
Breaking new ground.
On the Drummers Weekly Groovecast.
Yes, sir. I'm very excited about this change of pace.
Oh, me too. It was, we're due, man.
You're right.
You know, and I'm going to use an old trite adage here, but it's absolutely, 100% true. When we first started this show, you and I knew that it wasn't going to be an interview-based show. We knew it was going to be topic-based. But we decided that, you know, as we go along, we're absolutely going to want to interview some folks. And we made just a short list. And, it was unanimous. The first person that you and I both had on the list was our guest that we have today. And we're here in his house, man. We are making the property value plummet.
It is, yeah, it's just disgusting, man. Like, there's neighbors, like, with moving trucks just pulled up and they're heading out. They're just like, what's the point of staying? I feel kind of bad.
Well, you know, he can come live with one of us after this, I suppose, right?
In his old house that I'm going to buy for half the price.
Yeah.
Awesome. This podcast was worth every effort just for this.
Absolutely. And as John said, we're absolutely delighted to have our guest, or to have our guest invite us into his home today to record this show. And I'm going to have John he's going to not interview, but he's going to actually introduce our guest here in a few minutes. He's going to tell you a little bit about this guy. And in my opinion, and in John's opinion, this interview is long overdue. If you're not aware of this guy, you need to be aware of him. I'm going to go ahead and say it. He is Atlanta's own, we'll call him Jeff Porcaro of Atlanta, is what he is.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I'm not going to, he's already laughed, so Scott, you gave away who you are. But anyway, that's all right.
Those six people know.
Yeah.
Dang it.
So, without further ado, John, please tell us who we have here today.
We have my good friend, Southeast local legend, Mr. Scott Meeder. And I wish you could feel my excitement about all this, because there's not, it's well documented who my heroes and my influences are. And one of them happens to be a friend of mine. And here we are getting ready to learn a lot about him and gain a lot of knowledge. And, I kind of thought about this in this intro, like, with the exception of a couple major music hubs, most major cities have a guy, kind of the kingpin, the go-to session guy. The budget's right, the project's important, and Scott is that guy. And there's not a person in this town that would disagree with that. And it's been kind of it's been a really exciting thing to get to know him, because beyond his playing, which if circumstances were somewhat different, we would be talking about him in the same breath as the heroes we know and love. as a person, it just doesn't get any better. And that has been probably for me the most rewarding part of all of this. The gift of his playing and all that is awesome. But man, and just a stand-up guy, and
check, please.
I can't lie enough about that. I mean, say enough about that.
Yeah, well, he let us come over. So
Anyway,
yeah.
I could ramble on and on. There's just no reason to do that because we're gonna point to some things that will cement these truths and these opinions as facts. But just a quick little background on Scott. Some people he's recorded with, 38 Special, Boys to Men, Tony Braxton, Sugarland, Earl Clue, quite a bit of the contemporary Christian scene. He's done, played on record for Mac Powell, Aaron Schust, and New Song. Worked with some legendary producers along the way, and just has cemented his status amongst those in the know as just a smart hire. And with that, we're going to get into lots of fun stuff. I welcome Scott Meeder.
Thanks, guys. Phil, John, I'm delighted to be here, man. This is awesome. Humbled at the same time, and just welcome to my home, and can't wait to talk to you guys.
Man, we're honored. I mean, absolutely honored. And you know, since I want to add one quick thing to what John said about how, you know, he's gotten to know you. And when I was a kid up in Knoxville, up at UT back in the late 80s and the early 90s, when the guys in the music department up there used to talk about drummers and used to talk about, we'll call them local guys or regional guys, Scott Meeder's name absolutely came up regularly.
No way.
Absolutely you did. Absolutely you did.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I was actually offered a scholarship. I know we'll get into this, but speaking of UT, UT at Chattanooga offered me, well, Dan Spalding, who was my drum instructor at Spirit of Atlanta, was in the percussion department there, and he actually offered some of the drummers there, or some of the snare guys, a scholarship. So not to go off track a little bit, but
we want you to go off. No, that's awesome. But yeah, we used to.
We have never been on track.
Right. It was, our listeners will absolutely attest to that, right? But no, that was one of those things that when we used to talk about, you know, some of the guys, you know, that are in the know, some of the guys that are in the business, that are doing the things that we want to do, Scott Meeder's name used to come up. So I have not known Scott nearly that long, but I have his reputation in my mind certainly preceded, you know, I mean, I've known about him for dang near 30 years, you know, doing this stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that little aside in.
I always do say to anyone who listens, and I just really believe this, that your status here in town is just top tier, go to, you know, the guy. But I really firmly believe, and I, you know, no one could convince me otherwise, that if you lived anywhere else, it'd be the same thing. And that's something that, well, of course, in Knoxville you heard about him, because just when you're putting out that quality work, you know, it's going to get around. I mean, look, this business is small. Let's not kid ourselves, you know. I mean, if you change your underwear, people know what brand and size, you know. So the cream of the crop rises, all that cliche stuff, you know, you're definitely there. But man, it's mind-boggling to me that you aren't. And I think I know some reasons why that isn't the case, but we could get into some of that. But nonetheless, just a quick little background on you by way of experience and growth, and you know what it was. Why don't you share with us, kind of just coming up, how you developed into who you are today?
I mean, if you want to go back to high school,
yeah, I mean, we all have that.
You know,
it's one of the most influential times in my life.
Totally, and you know, I really, you know, we've seen Mr. Holland's Opus, the movie, right? I totally had a Mr. Holland's Opus experience with my band director, Melvin Hodges. Unreal guy. I mean, you're with him as much or even more than a football coach athlete experience. I mean, he's there. You're there 24/7 during the week with, and he poured his soul, heart, everything into everybody in that band. So my experience just personally was unreal. And he's an incredible saxophone player, jazz guy, unreal. Anyway, so I grew up doing the whole concert band thing, jazz lab, all that stuff, And that was my first experience playing jazz, really. My dad loved it because he had a jazz background.
Was your dad a player too?
My dad was a tenor player,
Awesome.
and my mom was a dancer. So, and her mom taught dance. So she will tell you that I get my rhythm from her, and she does have good time. My mom really has good time.
Yeah.
Just look at a dance floor.
I know.
Is there any question?
Yeah.
Women, Why isn't there more women drummers?
Right.
Because we would never work.
Yeah. I mean, the old saying is, what is it? Great dancers drum standing up, great drummers dance sitting down.
Right.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And my wife loves to dance, and I hate dancing.
Me too.
I feel so comfortable. You guys probably behind the kit. I could be in front of 1 million people.
Yeah.
And you ask me to come out from behind the kit and stand in front of a crowd or do anything.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
freeze. It's just there's a
It's like
comfort
that
zone.
naked dream
Yeah.
where you have
Right.
that's totally
So
true.
so through high school, the whole band thing, and my dad was general manager of 96 Rock growing up, which is a local station here in Atlanta that was a legendary album-oriented rock station. I mean, we had everybody come through there. Rod Stewart, Allman Brothers, Leonard Skinner. I mean, it was just Aerosmith. It was just, you could meet anybody on any given day coming through the
You were
station.
able to meet.
Yeah. Hey, Aerosmith's coming down.
Go
there.
to
Come on.
shows.
Go to shows.
Incredible.
My dad, then out of high school, I was in this prog rock band with my brother Richard, great bass player. That we were in the Yes and Genesis and all this, that kind of stuff. And my dad got us a warm-up slot. It was a 96 Rock sponsored show for Billy Thorpe. And he had one hit called Children of the Sun.
Nice.
Leland Sklar played bass, the whole thing.
No kidding.
I mean, he was a one-hit wonder, but but he packed the Fox out. But he got us to be the warm-up band. So that had its benefits, of growing up in a family that loved music. I mean, Mom and Dad would go see Gino Vanelli.
Incredible.
And wake us up at 3 a.m. because they just got back from Southeast Music Hall. You're not going to believe who we saw. Gino Vanelli. And then we'd put on the record at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's a school night, right?
That's gold.
It was awesome. Great upbringing, so loved it. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
Man, that's fantastic. Now I have to ask the obligatory question. Did you wear a cape when you were in the prog rock band?
The keyboard player did, though.
Oh, yes. We just said that, right?
He had to.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you guys have been booed off the stage if you didn't have a cape.
I mean, one of our there was a writer, a music critic in Atlanta who wrote in the Creative Loafing. Do you remember that magazine?
Sure do.
It's still
Russell
around,
Shaw.
isn't it?
Remember, he would write all the music reviews. So our name was 12th Night. So 12th Night playing at C.W. Shaw's coming up or whatever. And his whole thing was, old Genesis record scratched? Go check out 12th Night.
Hey, was it?
I mean, it was just always just,
Please tell me it was Night with a K.
It wasn't.
Oh, okay.
I know.
I thought we were going to get a nice medieval reference in there too for that. Yeah.
But that would have been a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He might have liked you then with his Dungeons and Dragons music critic crap.
Scott, with getting a little more in depth with your education, you have noted to us that you studied with a legendary local teacher here, a guy named Jack Bell, who, aside from teaching, he was the longtime principal percussionist for the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. Tell us just a little bit about how you got involved with him and maybe some of the things that you guys worked on.
That was primarily when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And my mom actually, not pressured me, but she encouraged me to get on his waiting list to take lessons. And I was
Smart lady,
always
wasn't
on,
she?
he was in high demand. He was full. And maybe once a month, he would call me up and say, hey, I got an opening. Can you make it? And, you just jump. If it's Jack Bell, you just jumped on it, no matter what. So with Jack, it was total precision. I think Jack's rudimental approach was probably the reason why I was able to make Spirit of Atlanta and be on the snare line. I mean, he was that good. I mean, it was. Plus, I like the fact that I played match grip on set, and he's a match grip guy.
Right.
So, and I love that. It was not a lot of transition. You know, he could do both, but he allowed me to play snare match grip, which would translate into set as well.
You know, was Spirit match grip?
No, it was traditional.
Okay.
But I think Jack's approach with the rudimental match stuff kind of enabled me to kind of incorporate some of that into the set a little easier.
Okay.
You know, if there was some jazz stuff or whatever.
You know, one thing that I think is kind of fascinating, because every single drummer that studies any at all, they have their own kind of story about how they learned, you know, basic technique and rudiments. Jack, being one of kind of the preeminent teachers of this kind of thing, what were like some of the, like, how did he teach you rudiments, so to speak, you know?
It's kind of foggy right now, but it was, his whole approach was, you know, like a roll can be a buzz. Jack's, this is what sticks out to me. Everything was not a guess. It was, if it was 30-second notes, it was 30 seconds. If there were 4 slashes and a quarter note or 3, whatever, it's 30 seconds. It's not a buzz roll.
Right.
So every note was accounted for. He was that precision. That's what sticks out to me. So everything kind of translated that way. It's whether we're doing xylophone or whatever. Very meticulous and very just to the T of what it's supposed to be, not any guesswork involved. So he didn't leave anything uncovered. It's like, if you're going to play a 30-second, it's not a buzz, okay? That's what sticks out to me with Jack. Just precision and no waste, nothing.
Just deliberate.
Just deliberate.
In every way.
Isn't it interesting also that you being known, what you're known for as far as being the preeminent studio guy in this city, that part of your training had to deal with precision and being absolutely, I mean, commit, certain, you're going to be determined, you're going to play it this way, and it's going to be clean and precise.
Right.
Certainly helped a bit.
It sure did, man. It really did. And what was flattering about Jack was I was lucky enough to make the All-State Jazz Ensemble in high school, senior year in high school. And we practiced at Georgia State. Jack's studio was right around the corner.
Right.
And we practiced in that band room. And he came, he said, I hope you don't mind if I come in and just watch you play. And he sat behind me with his arms folded and his legs crossed the entire rehearsal.
Yeah.
So you talk about intimidating.
Yeah.
But he reassured me. He said, listen, I don't do this. You know, this is not my thing. I'm learning. So it was to have Jack say that. And here I am, just a high school senior, you know, playing ding, 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 ding. And Jack saying, that's okay, man. I'm here to just learn myself. So that was Jack.
How awesome.
And he'd already built up his whole legend and all that. So
yeah.
it's like, that's crazy. But it speaks volumes to his character as
Absolutely.
well. You know, like, I'm not the be all and end all.
Right. I want to put this guy at ease and just, you know.
So awesome.
So also learned from Bill Wilder as well. Is also
with the ASO.
He's still in the ASO.
Yeah.
And he was more the set guy for me. I actually took from him when I was in at DeKalb College, the jazz band there, and he would come every week and teach a lesson at the college. So he taught me out of the Jim Chapin book, and Bill's kind of the guy that if the Atlanta Symphony is doing a date with Bruce Hornsby, you know, Bruce Hornsby with the Atlanta Symphony, Bill is like the set guy.
Absolutely.
You know, he's always been the guy with feel. You know what I mean?
Right.
He can actually bang out
follow the conductor too.
Exactly.
You know, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Quick story about Bill Wilder. The first time that I became aware of him, actually, and because I've subbed a few times with the ASO on certain Pops concerts when everybody else takes vacation because they don't want to play in the Pops concerts. But anyway, the first time I ever met, it's the truth, man. I'm just telling you that the symphony musicians
you told me they're marked on the calendar, big red circle, like vacation.
Yeah, they absolutely, they do. They do not like playing those Pops concerts. But the first time I met Bill has a son who I believe is also named Bill. I think his name is Bill. But his son is about my age now, and his son came up to Tennessee when I was up there and auditioned for school. I cannot remember if he attended up there, but yeah, his son actually came up and auditioned up at Tennessee when I was up there. So I actually met Bill Wilder back in maybe like 89 or something like that. But yeah, another legendary teacher and percussionist here in town.
We did, I was put together in a rhythm section for Truett Cathy's 90th birthday party at Symphony Hall.
Yeah, folks, that's the founder of Chick-fil-A.
And it was Atlanta Symphony was behind us, and we were sort of in front rhythm section, like Diane DeGarmo and different Michael W. Smith performed for this thing, and Bill Wilder's back there on timpani. And in rehearsal, we were going through the charts and songs and stuff, and I remember I played something stupid. Phil just fell all over myself, and I looked back at Bill, and he goes, "It's okay." So of course he heard it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But being the guy hey man, it's fine.
Dude, I love it. You don't look to the conductor, the singer, you're looking at my guy.
I'm turning around.
I don't really care what anybody else thinks. Bill? Oh, that's awesome.
And he went, "You're good. No worries."
Fantastic.
So,
yeah. That's probably
always the pupil, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was gonna say that Phil was in time compared to what probably the rest of the orchestra was playing, Scott.
Right, you set up the downbeat that came.
Yeah, it was a feel thing.
Way later. Incredible. Well, hey man, we with background and all that, a lot of us have a lot of that in common, for sure, and it's certainly developmental and shapes you in a lot of ways. Especially what we overlook sometimes is the individual teachers versus the application. How much of an influence, like I know in my case, being professional, giving 100%, being on time, all these things, sometimes we really lose sight of that in the, my technique has to be, my chops got to be, I got to have my political game together. But man, awesome to give props to people that, we forget the human part of our success. Right. Is something we should always be mindful of. And I really appreciate coming from a place of a similar experience that, you recognize that.
It's relational stuff that sticks with you, man. Totally. All these years, 40 years later, and that's what you remember.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that almost goes for just about everything we do.
Oh, yeah.
Look, how many of us have gotten a gig that wasn't from a friend saying, man, this guy's cool and he plays great? That's how it happens, and relationally. But those influences, you could have gone on and on and on about Jack or Bill's, nitty gritty of teaching, but you're way more influenced and touched by their generosity or their spirit, or right. And man, that's totally awesome stuff. So as far as some gigs that you've done, getting into some success that you've had, one of the high profile gigs you did was 38 Special. And I know some of that came out of your, really developing a reputation as a studio guy in town. People are, enamored with what you're bringing, and you're getting hired a lot and all that. And it kind of came out of that, if I'm not right. Your reputation was growing, and why don't you kind of give us an idea of how that came about and your experience with
that? Sure. Through the 80s, I was playing with Dromos and Tom Gross. I don't know if you guys remember those guys around town.
We've heard of Tom Gross.
Yeah. So I had a lot of electronic stuff going on back in the day.
Embrace technology.
Yeah, I embraced it.
On.
I had the Simmons brains. I had 2 Simmons brains and a Lindrum. Going for loops and,
sequencing stuff,
all kinds of stuff, and a whole PA of stuff that blasted it all through some cabinets behind me. So I was way into it.
Yeah.
So the 38 thing, how that morphed was Rodney Mills producer here in Atlanta, done Skinner, Atlanta Rhythm Section, you name it, had just cut a Doobie Brothers record in 1990, using all electronic stuff. I don't know what it was. I don't know what they did, but all electronic drum kit.
What record was it?
I'm not sure. They cut it out in L.A.
Okay.
I'm not sure which record it was. So he wanted to do that on the next 38 record.
These are samples and...
It's samples, yeah, like Akai samplers and using a Mac. Wow. That whole thing. Wow. Playing drum pads into a Mac and then just like,
no kit whatsoever.
None.
Wow. Okay.
They were overed up in real cymbals and hat.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So they wanted to do that on this 38 record. So they attempted to try it. And the drummer at the time was kind of in transition. He was going into ministry and he was thinking about quitting anyway. So his heart really wasn't in it. So during the start of the record, he left and said, well, who's around town that we could probably try this electronic thing? So my name came up with all the background of the electronic stuff. So they brought me in for a couple songs just to see how they went. And I had the MPC at the end, the Akai MPC 60 at the time, and a couple samplers and that kind of things, and a drum cat. That's it. So I had all my sounds sort of sampled into this thing, and it sounded like me. You know, you can play other sounds, but if they're not your sounds, they don't sound the same as your sounds, sort of, because they play differently. So it was kind of me anyway. So we did that and overed up some live cymbals, and it went great, and ended up doing the whole record. And after that, 6 months go by. I'm back in the studio doing dates here and there, and they said, hey, we're going to tour this thing. We got a top 40 hit. Want to go out? And this is before kids. So I really talked to my wife, said, I'd love to, go out and I've never toured before. I'd love to try it and see what it's like out there. And it wasn't really a bad tour situation. It wasn't three months at a time you're gone. It was 3 weeks.
Oh,
which is pretty easy schedule because these guys are all married and have kids and everything. So it was a great experience. It was 2 years. I mean, I'm not a road guy. I played a lot of golf.
Yeah.
It was fun. I wrenched my back. We had played so much golf.
Yeah. So was it like bus tour for the most part?
Bus tour. We'd fly out to a leg. Like we'd fly out to the West Coast and then catch a bus for that whole side of the country and then fly back.
And then like what kind of venues?
Outdoor fairs, that kind of thing.
Festivals,
kind of playing with Journey, like warming up for Journey or something like that, or in a stadium, or kind of all over the map a little bit. Some indoor theaters here and there, but mostly outdoor.
And then do you have a crew, tech, all that kind of stuff?
Scott Hoffman was my drum tech.
Who was it?
Scott Hoffman.
From Philadelphia?
Incredible. No. Do you know who this guy is?
Scott Hoffman. There's a Scott Hoffman that's a big, he's a collector.
Scott Hoffman's an incredible drummer too. I mean, he is so good. And he had a little side band with some of the guys in 38. They have their own little band. But it's a little quick story about Scott. Scott was going on after he left 38. He went on to road managing for, not Boys to Men, the other boy band. 98 Degrees or, Backstreet Boys. It was Backstreet Boys. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Florida, that makes sense.
So Scott's doing the James Taylor gig like in the last few years. Steve Gadd.
Who?
2 years for Steve Gadd.
Who?
Yeah, he's just a guy. He's kind of a local legend in Rochester. You might not know him.
Steve gets appendicitis attack.
I've heard this story.
This is the guy?
This is the guy? Yeah.
This is the guy who was my drum tech. And they're like freaking out, calling everybody they know in LA, can we get so-and-so out here, fly out, blah, blah, blah. And they have got a show that night. And everybody they've contacted can't get there till the next day. And they ask my buddy Scotty, man, can you do the show?
I know it inside and out.
I've been watching Steve for 2 years,
Yeah.
He nails it.
Of course. Oh, it's awesome.
James is coming up to him between every song. Man, you're killing it. You're doing awesome. And whoever they had coming the next day, they canceled. See, Scott's doing the gig till Steve comes back. So
how long did he play?
I think 3 or 4 shows, something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great story, man.
It makes so much sense.
I
If
love
it's
it.
a capable
I love stories like
player,
that. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
the nightmare of no matter who it is, any ringer is going to come in and be like,
you never know.
how's that ending go?
Just because some guy's teching for you never know.
Yeah.
Really, their story and how, they could be ready to jump in at any second, man. There's some great talent out there.
There sure is, and it's certainly, it's just so presumptuous of us to think like, that's sort of like, we get wrapped up in this stuff like, oh, if you teach, you can't play, and the tech thing. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule.
Or if you play, you can't teach.
Right. Yeah.
Which
right.
there might be something to that.
Yeah.
But getting back to the 38 thing. So I did the 2 years, and after the 2 years, I was really missing studio because I was kind of building up a lot of clients between the time of recording the record and going out on tour.
Mm-hmm.
So all that really came to an end once I did hit the tour and all that. So
had to build it back
once they
up.
said, we're done with this record, we're not supporting this record anymore. We'll record maybe in the future again, maybe doing the tour a couple of years down the road. Well, 6 months go by. I'm in Nashville and I got a call that, hey, we're going back out and we're just doing a scaled down club tour.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do it. Yeah. Which I hated to because I love the guys. They're all great guys. But in the long run, it was a better decision for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You definitely were really, really coming into your own.
Hey, Scott, let me ask you just a couple of questions also about that 38 Special gig, just from the standpoint that there are a few questions that I think a lot of people would like to know about a large scale, arena style touring gig. That a lot of times these questions just don't get asked. And one of them, John asked a great one about, did you have a tech? That kind of
right.
thing. When you were approached for this, how did you negotiate as far as like what you were getting paid or how you were getting paid and any kind of travel perks? How did you do that?
I had to contact their management and talk it over a little bit. And I was actually making more than they were because they were vested members of the band.
Right.
So
See,
I did
this is good stuff.
Yeah, and they got more, of course, mechanicals and being vested members of the band. They got savings and all that stuff. Run like a corporation. But as a side man, I felt. Back in 1991, I was pretty satisfied with what I was getting paid at the time. There wasn't a whole lot of negotiation. I came back once, but
sure,
it was in the ballpark of what we were thinking anyway. But of course, we'd all like to be rich off stuff, but it's kind of like okay, these guys aren't, making platinum records anymore like they were.
Sure.
So it was almost like they're
gotta be realistic.
they're out there and working, but it wasn't like they were, the police.
Too.
Right. Sure. Absolutely. And one more thing about that, that's kind of again, kind of one of those questions that doesn't really get asked that much, aside from like just the normal, just the grind of travel. And no matter anybody who's never traveled before, regardless of the fact if you are flying first class or chartered plane or chartered bus, it is still hard. The travel aspect is ridiculous. It will grind you down. But aside from that, what was the hardest part of that gig?
Boredom.
Yeah, I get it.
I know that's part of the grind that you talked about.
Yeah.
But
I get
boredom
it.
and missing my wife, of course. During those, the longest leg we had was 5 weeks, and that was really tough, man.
Mm-hmm.
After that 5 weeks, I get back home and I'm like, I don't even know you.
Sure.
Well, and I can see how this stuff can grind down and wear down a marriage. It was just that scared me a little bit.
No doubt.
2 or 3 weeks when that was the norm for us to be
Sure.
out.
Mm-hmm.
That was fine. But man, that 5 week leg, that was really, really tough. And that was the toughest part, I think.
Anytime anybody asks me about traveling on the road and what it's like, the first thing I always say to them is it's suspended reality.
Totally.
It's totally
That's
suspended
a
reality.
great analogy. Yeah, totally.
Because man, you're out for 3-4 weeks at a time. Man, you are in a parallel universe, man. Because the only thing, it's just like you said, the only thing you're there to do is play the gig in the time. What do you do for the other
2 hours a day?
hours?
And what do you do with the other 22, right?
That's exactly. So it's suspended reality, and it's almost like, And not to step on any toes here, but it's a little bit like if you were in the military and you have to kind of get reintegrated back into society. I mean, it really is. It's hard to describe to people if you haven't been gone for a little while. Then I mean,
and you can see how people get tempted to do other things,
absolutely,
because of that. You know,
I mean, there's the whole thing of you know, a lot of people we know that are regular road dogs, when they come back, man, a lot of people like deal with some depression. And suspended reality is right. I mean, you're out in this world where you're just adored, you're catered to. Pretty much someone's telling you where to be and when to be, and everything you need is you know, and you come home and it's just like, oh, this adjustment. And that's not for everybody.
Right.
You know, and like you said, I mean, a strain of a marriage, man, you got to sit down and say, hey, is this worth it or not? And you're the only one that can answer that. So there's
another difficult part of that gig. Even maybe the 5 years or so leading up to that I did have some studio experience. You know, when you're in a studio, you're just kind of coasting, right? You're not really pushed physically.
Yeah.
What a rude awakening. 38. I mean, there's you can't explain, you can't anticipate the level of the hype and the adrenaline that you get when you're. I've never felt that before with a band like that, and people singing the songs, every song they know. So you're playing harder and you're playing tighter.
Yep.
You're not loose. You're just kind of banging those first couple songs out. And I remember my hands, I couldn't even hold the sticks hardly. It was so bad. Just trying to keep up with the level of excitement and adrenaline and all that. And you got to look physical. You can't be bored studio musician guy.
Right, a little more animated.
You got to be a little more visual and the whole thing. And man, that was a tough adjustment those first couple of weeks. I mean, my hands were cramping up. That's when I started warming. Okay, I got to do something. I got to warm up practice pads.
Right.
Blood, blisters, the whole thing. I mean, it was really bad.
There's guys that are making great livings because they have such a great handle on that. And there is a lot to be said for, you know, I mean, just when we do gigs to gigs, you know, like a small ballroom to a big outdoor stage, it's a whole different animal.
Totally.
And you have to play differently. And then couple that with the adrenaline that brings on, you know, a hit machine, you know, that's a tough one, man. How did you eventually just kind of, was it more of a mental thing, or, you know, you mentioned warming up, but what got you through that initial?
It was mental thing as well, but it was physically. I just had to work through building up calluses. You know, I'm not a drum gloves guy. I've never. So I wasn't going to do that. I just had to build up calluses and get through the blood blisters and all that stuff. And mentally, it was more, okay, I can look fluid and look more animated without being tight. So it's just a breathing thing and just relax. You know, just relax a little more. You know, that kind of got me through it.
Scott, one other thing, since you did that 38 album using electronics, did you bring electronics out on the road with you in the early 90s?
I brought the MPC out with the Kai MPC 3000.
Right.
I had some samples, some of the samples that I had used on some of the stuff. And I had some samples I triggered with my drum cat into the MPC. And we ran Click on a couple songs. Yeah. Which, this is before ears, so I would have Click actually blasted through some wedges.
Yeah.
It was so old school, man.
It's amazing.
You know, and I mean, I want to reiterate something here about what Scott is saying about the electronics back in the 80s and 90s. Kids that are listening to this today, we're not talking about plug and play stuff right now. Learning to use that stuff was almost like learning to play an instrument over again. You know, I mean, this is some pretty heady stuff, man. Back in there's not a lot of people were doing this.
Yeah, we're kind of at the luxury now of like, that's a cool loop, which is, you know, got 1,000 sounds on it. Let's just loop that for a couple bars.
Let me play that off my phone.
Right.
You know?
Hey, I'm just gonna fly this to you, and you can put it in Pro Tools and map it out. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
We become so lazy.
Well, yeah.
Not that we want to use all that stuff all the time, but
It definitely, in my experience, I embraced technology early on too, and
Yeah.
no one would ever believe that, but there are some pictures that prove it's true. Because now I'm like stuck in 1967 in most people's minds. But
Hey, let me tell you something.
It was.
You revolutionized North Point Church by bringing the click in that place, buddy. Because I'm telling you.
No, I didn't. My therapist did. Yeah, that was. Yeah. I remember the day, the glorious day, that a keyboard player couldn't play the intro to Earth, Wind & Fire's version of "Got to Get You Into My Life," and it was just falling apart. And I was like, "Hey, man, we could just throw this click up here," and things changed.
The rest is history. Now they're Ableton endorsers, so
of course.
I know.
Yeah, they get the first upgrade. They're the test market, right? Incredible. But that whole technology thing, you know, that your reputation is to this day someone that embraced and is well versed and certainly capable of doing it. I mean, I know you've had sessions where you're hired simply to program, not even play. And
I don't do as much as I used to because some of the programming's become a little bit deep for me. You know, as far as I don't know, it's almost feels like okay, we've gone beyond what a normal drummer does now. When did it become the drummer's responsibility to play an entire whole nother band?
You know, that's a great point.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Dude, I mean, even on a more primitive level, it's like, why is this drummer sitting over here trying to hit that spacebar on that laptop when that keyboard player has played one note the whole song and could be and has probably been and he's had a computer since he was 9.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Right.
What's wrong with this?
That's Gracie, y'all. She's excited.
She's making her guest appearance, and Harvey's not even here, right? Yeah.
She's calling Harvey.
But there are drummers here in town that know that stuff way better than I do now. I mean, it's unreal. I know, like Ryan Harvey's a guy that, great drummer, moved to Nashville, and his first big gig in Nashville is running Ableton for a major country act on stage. I mean, he's their stage Ableton guy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how deep he is with this stuff. So if you got it, use it. And
in 1989, you were there though, like, you know,
it's just
embraced
it's
it, and the learning curve. Like, you come to a point where you're like, hey, I can't invest in this. It's not really serving me like it did then.
Right.
Or,
I know enough to like
producers.
pull up loops and, like you say, Phil, the same kind of stuff you're probably doing, like pulling up loops and stylus or something and playing along with them, and they producers love it. And you're not like working on a whole record for a song for 2 weeks, you know, and like you're going to really get an original loop that nobody's ever heard before. They're trying to can we just throw a loop up on this? And that's the majority of stuff I get.
Right. You know, this is a good kind of a segue for me to ask you a question that I hear from a lot of friends that are up in Nashville, these things about loops and clicks.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you this question that's, like I said, kind of ties into this whole thing. There's this kind of, I don't know, it's just this bizarre kind of little story that I hear from time to time that these guys up in Nashville, that, you know, the ones that we hear about all the time that do the session work and stuff like that, one of the things that they're hired for is to like program an interesting click. Or to use a okay. Do you see where this is going? You guys heard. You guys have heard this.
Angelina Jolie saying 1,
right,
2,
okay,
3, 4.
Verse.
Yeah. All right. So
take 2.
So these stories I'm hearing have made the rounds. Then I hear, and I hear these stories about, you know, guys bringing in old like MPC 60s and stuff that still have, or you know, these different sequencers that use the old like the true floppy disks, you know, that they put in there that have these little loops and stuff, that they would rather use those instead of clicks. Right?
Click feels different on those.
Exactly. Sounds different, feels different. I just feel like the click is too thin on an Ableton, you know, or one of those kind of things, right? So I wanted to ask you, when you either do sessions or if you're doing something live and you're using a click, first off, preference, quarter note or eighth note click. Secondly, forget the click. I do my own interesting loop or interesting click? What do you do?
I used to use the MPC Click exclusively. I think they derived it from the old Uri Click. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it sounds like static pop.
Yeah. But I think over time, I think it's got a low transient on it.
Yes.
I think it's done damage to my ears.
Interesting.
So I've actually gotten to really like the Ableton Click now. Because it's higher. It's like more of a woodblock sound,
right.
And you can kind of tuck it down in the mix a little more, and it doesn't have that low end transient on it.
Do you like quarter or eighth click?
Depends on the tempo. Below 120, definitely. I mean, that's pretty high to go eighth note. You know? But I like to get things tight without locking things up in Pro Tools, you know. And if it's if an eighth note click is going to get me there without me having to think too much,
right?
And just it's there, but it's subliminal, and I don't have to think about it, then that's what I'll go with, you know.
Do you ever, instead of using a static click, like either an eighth or quarter note click, go with like a loop or anything instead of?
I mean, on rare occasions, but it'll definitely just be a click, usually.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about like maybe a little shaker pattern in there or something.
Yeah, or like I said, I've even heard of some Nashville guys that will have some kind of a programmed loop
just to
use.
Just to get them through, like have a 16th note feel in it or something like that.
Yeah. It could even be like different percussion sounds, congas and other things in there as well that gives them just a certain
more
kind
subdividing.
Right, more subdividing and a certain kind of a feel to play along with. You know, from that.
Only in the fact that those have been used before, but maybe something that we would keep.
Gotcha. I mean? That would be on the track as well. I understood.
But never as a custom click track, if you will.
Yeah. Like I said, I believe the sources that I heard it from, I do believe it's true. I just find it kind of interesting that some of these guys would go to that length and that some of them would be actually hired.
Well, it's sort of I think it kind of ties into like that boredom on the road thing. Like they might just be so bored.
Yeah.
You know, anyone I know that's doing.
I mean, is it?
Well, I had a student that he went to school up in Boston and then moved down to Nashville and ended up doing some like cartage work. And it's some of the names that everybody knows. Yeah. You know, the session. And he was just talking about that there was just kind of some kind of interesting ways that they approach things, you know, instead of using just, because I mean, anytime I'm in the studio, I'm just like, whatever you got, man, just throw me a quarter note click up, you know, or whatever. But that some of those guys are so particular, and that even some producers or engineers will hire them because of their ability to bring in these different kinds of clicks that these other musicians like to play with, you know.
Crazy.
It is.
It's nuts.
It absolutely is nuts.
Scott, talking about, you know, we had mentioned earlier about we'd love to get into some nuts and bolts of recording and advice for people and all that, but as far as sessions go, you know, one question that I've asked you in the past, like, man, do you ever have a bad day? Things just aren't working, you know, like you don't physically feel it, you're not locking in, you know, and what's your way of just trying to get past that? And, you know, just speak to that. As far as, you know, someone who's less experienced may go in a little nervous or whatever, you know, what's some advice for that?
I mean, I would be lying if I said that I never have days like that. I mean, I've had plenty of days like that, and I remember days where you feel like everything you do, and it's kind of a snowball effect. Everything you do is just wrong. And the producer or the writer is telling you, no, that's not right either. So it does happen. And it's like, and there's this doubt that kind of creeps. It's human nature. And it's all of a sudden it just starts snowballing.
Oh, you can hear it in your takes even, like
it's
your
just,
confidence and stuff.
Oh, it's like, just, and you just want to leave. You just want to quit, you know. But man, just to fight, I mean, just the next, it's another day tomorrow. It's like, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's just,
it's almost like an athlete's mentality.
Yeah,
in a way.
Don't be the player you are not. I think that's what that's what helps me, is like, just do what you do. I mean, they got you because of who you are. Don't try to do what some session player in Nashville does because they played with them. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because then you're going to be, because then they might as well hire that guy, and you're never going to be that guy. So just be yourself.
That's really true. I know when I first moved here, I had some people would call it misery of replacing you in a setting. And at first I was like, everybody's talking about Scott, and I got to play like Scott. And I had a year or so where I was just a mess, like, that's not what I do. And all that. And it was actually, you were kind of the catalyst for me breaking out of that, in that we talked about it. I'm like, I kind of even shared with you, like, oh man, everybody talks about Scott and you got to do this and that, and people were wearing me out about not having electronics and this and you were just like, man, that's just a bunch of crap. Don't do that.
Right.
Be you. And sure enough, I did, and things worked out. So that advice is, I'm living proof of.
Dude, I heard you play on Dan's thing once, or for Aaron Schust over at Tree. Was it Tree?
That sounds right.
Man, the groove he laid down, it was just so simple. It was just like a medium tempo thing. It's like, dadgummit, that's it. You just got the sauce, man. It's just like we can learn from each other so much. And man, I love that day. That's I'm always going to remember that.
That means a lot.
I'm so glad that Dan put us together on that project, because, man, you're a grooving fool, bro.
Thanks, man. That means a lot. But let's go back to talking about you.
Don't you feel me diverting?
Yeah.
I'm deflecting.
We're talking about you. No, all that to say, there's a couple things that Scott directly influenced me on. Was be yourself, and though you don't realize it, man, I have bad days. You have no idea how much that did for me. Like, of course you do. Duh, you just build it up that the legend's not going to have bad days. Well, we all do, and man, tomorrow's another day. Yeah. That's huge. That's
a good example of that. Be yourself was. I won't mention any names, but we were working on a track for somebody's solo record, and Peter Stroud was in the room, Tim Smith on bass. It was I was already intimidated, and I tried this groove, kind of a rim thing, kind of vibey a little bit, wow, chord notes on the rim, boy, that's new, right?
Yeah.
But the artist said, no, I don't like that. Well, and I said, but I was trying to do something like Mayberry would do, like on your other record or whatever. And he goes, he would never do that on my record. So there you go. It's like, don't copy somebody else.
Yeah.
That was like right in the face. Okay, that's just be myself. Don't even if I was thinking of Mayberry, don't say his name. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like maybe have some of his vibe creep into you, but don't just say, well, that's something he would do on your record. That's why I'm doing it. That's the wrong approach. So
yeah, you did touch on it, man. You were hired for you, and there's something that I think in the studio game too, man. We just build things up, to be
bigger than they are.
Yeah, well, that's just.
It's that weird,
easy to do.
It's that weird thing. It's a human thing that when we're in the studio, that we automatically think this is going to last forever. You know what I mean? We are putting a statement down that's going to last forever. So I don't want to look or sound like a chump, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think that's what it has to do, because every one of us know somebody that's gotten what we call red light fever. All of a sudden, hey, this we're recording, here's a take, and then somebody just invariably freezes up or whatever. And I think that's just part of human nature. It's part of our condition.
Yeah, but and look, there's pressure. Time restraints and budgets, and we've all done that 10 songs in a day thing where it's brutal, man. And those things are when we do make the mistake of building session versus live, all that, it can catch up with you pretty quick.
That whole red light syndrome, that was Ricky Keller was the first one I heard ever mention that.
Red light syndrome.
Yeah.
One thing that one thing that I personally try to do regarding that whole thing to try to minimize any kind of like imagined pressure in the studio, man, every time I play live, I just try to play like I'm in studio.
Just funny, I've had
bring that.
Another friend of ours says the exact opposite. Man, I just go in and pretend like it's live.
That's cool.
Interesting.
And it's sort of like
interesting, yeah.
You know, and that's what works for him.
Yeah.
And his work speaks for itself. You know, it's fantastic. And I actually leaned on that for a while. Like, man, I usually play pretty good live.
There's an energy level that's going to get translated, you know, to what you put down if that's your approach. Yeah.
You know, that's very true.
Scott, one thing that I think it really resonated with me the first time I heard somebody say it, but it wasn't the last time I heard somebody say it, was when you're in the studio with mutual friends of ours, other, like say bass players, keyboard players, guitarists that John and I both regularly play with. We'll be on a gig or be on another session, and one of them say, I just did a thing with Meeder, and man, one of the things that guy has got just an innate gift for is every time you're in the studio, that is the most important thing on the face of the planet, and that you are always willing and always come forth with wonderful suggestions as far as like, you know, man, this sounds great. You know, let's try to go in this direction, or hey, I've got an idea for this. And that is to me, that is an incredible gift to be able to do that. And you have to be careful though, that you don't step on toes, you know, when you do that, because there's always either an artist or of course the engineer and the producer sitting in that booth. You know, how do you first have the energy and have kind of the mental capacity to get in there? And let's just be honest, not every session you go into is a Grammy winner. In fact, 90% of them are not, right?
You're going to be polishing a little bit here and there.
You got it. How do you maintain just a wonderful attitude? And then part two, how do you navigate being able to make these suggestions without stepping on toes?
I'm just reminded how lucky I am to be doing what I'm doing, you know, as first and foremost, to be able to do what I love. You know, I remind myself of that, just going to these studios and playing music for a living. I mean, they're just nothing better for me. But I think they're bringing you there for a reason. I think not just to play what they're telling you to play. I think they're inviting musical ideas at the same time. And I think if you cross over, I think they'll let you know. You know, so I usually push up to that limit. You know, I'm pretty comfortable doing that. Yeah. And I think, you know, a lot of these producers and artists are, especially producers, they're in tune with the song where they know it can go, and they've got an idea. But I also think about the big picture too a lot. We talked about this earlier, groove versus, you know, just like what fills you're going to play and all that stuff, really, you know, getting down to the nitty gritty of the song. But I try to think of the big picture of the song. You know, I don't really listen to lyrics a whole lot. I do, but you know, but I try to get the visual picture of the song and where it's going, over the fact that, oh, this would be cool to do here. You know, right? There's a difference. Okay, this would sound cool, but does it really help the song, what they're trying to convey in the song? I think that's part of it, and just knowing, you know, I'm not really concerned with where my boundaries are, because they'll let you know. I think, you know, if I've got a good idea I think I'm going to throw out there, I'll throw it out. Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, you're not, in other words, you're not coming from a place of fear. Right. That's all. That's very important to know. Yeah. Because the people that I work with so often are the same people that, you know, we work on a regular basis with, Shell Rodgers and Sonny Lollerstadt and those guys locally. You know, I'm talking about more. Those are just hotbeds of ideas. Everybody's flying around ideas, and it can be really fun, and you can really sculpt a tune. Yeah, there's years really, of trust and proving your worth as far as input. That's a whole different story than if you're going in and working with Quincy Jones for the first time and you're like, hey, you should do this. You know, that probably might. And you're not looking for something to be stock over and over again. You know what I mean? Right. Yeah. So you're trying to get away from that. At least I am. Trying to, hey, what if we just tried this in the second verse or something?
Sure. Yeah.
Here's something that, like, we joked about the 10-song day, and I know you've done records like this. God knows I have, where 6 of those songs are pretty much the same song.
Pretty much.
And getting through that, like, either what's inspiring you or trying to break things up and all that, and is that, are you pretty in those settings, are you really taking the bull by the horns a lot of times, saying, hey man, let's mix this up, or I'm going to do this? Or
I think on those days you're not throwing a whole lot of unconventional ideas out there.
Just
you're
making
pretty much,
it work.
Yeah.
Knocking it out. Yeah, sometimes I've felt that pressure, like, oh, this is a 4-song with a ding, 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 and you're like, and
right.
You're putting the pressure on yourself almost more so than the project's reputation or whatever, and that's probably the most challenging thing I think we come across, to be honest with you.
Totally.
Not, some song that's really difficult and we take the time to break it down, and these amazing players, and you got 4 hours to nail it. It's those ones where you're just like,
and you don't want to make it sound like the previous song
you
was cut.
That's the biggest challenge.
It's a challenge.
You're careful about that. Careful about the drum fills you play. Careful about the cymbals that you use, the cymbals that you hit in different places. You're thinking, I'm just playing the same thing over and over.
Right.
Leave that Black Beauty up and be done with it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those Southern gospel tracks, like the old, like the Nealons. We used to cut many songs in a day over at 12 Oaks, cutting those guys.
Just knocking them out.
Knocking them out.
Speaking of, it kind of ties into, one thing that always fascinates me about you, and I think a lot of guys that work a lot in that, is I'm just fascinated by your vocabulary. And when I say that, I mean, as session players or people who've done sessions, we tend to beat ourselves up sometimes, like, I got 4 fills.
Right.
I'm doing the same old crap. And I kind of feel like you have this just sort of endless well to draw from in that. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, what, as far as influence and as far as the said vocabulary, are you a guy that really, when listening, do you listen to music often, first and foremost? And secondly, if you do, or when you did, were you pretty intent on drum specific parts, or were you not? And, did that vocabulary come from just years of doing it, or the comfort level you're at this point? Speak to that a little bit, because that's the thing a lot of us wrestle with, is like.
Well, man, thanks for that, John. That's a great compliment. I think a lot of it is just what I listened to early. The foundation. I think that's, to me, the players I listened to early were Phil Collins, Bruford, Alan White. It was sort of a little brain rock. Bonham, of course. Badio, Vinny, Pat Masalato from Mr. JR. Those are the guys I started listening to early, So it was a combination of groove and a little technique. So I think feel-wise, I don't think about, I do think ahead of time, okay, that fill's coming up into the chorus. I don't want to do Debbie Boone,
I got that covered. Back off.
I've got the Pat Boone. He's got the.
But
Debbie
you can't
Boone, right?
You can't go over the top either. It's got to be big and powerful.
Yeah.
So I think I try to maybe just break up things a little more. Just it's still the same amount of notes. It's just where you start it. Start a little bit different. Put some space in between the hits. Spread it out the same amount of notes. I don't know. Just try something different. But I think a lot of it's just what I listened to growing up. That's how my playing sounds. I wouldn't say I'm a straight up rock drummer, but I've got a little bit of, I don't know, fusion rock kind of pop.
Underlying.
Yeah,
sort of
underlying
thing,
in there a little bit.
Yeah, I hear that.
It's not so straight up, and I'm not a vibey player. I'm more of a pop rock guy.
cleaner.
So clean, you know, just so a lot of my fills were just like, I listened to all those Phil Collins, Chester Thompson stuff they did together.
Yep.
You know, I just cut my teeth on all that stuff. That was my dream gig. I wanted to be in Genesis. I was, okay, Chester, you're great. Bye. Man, it was my dream to be playing on stage, and then Phil gets through with a verse of "In the Air Tonight" and comes back, and we're playing together. I mean, that's like the pinnacle dream gig for me. Amazing. I would still do it in a heartbeat right now. That'd be my dream gig. Mm-hmm. So cutting my teeth on all that stuff, that kind of shaped my playing. I think that's kind of where my feels came from. Here it is 40 years later. So
yeah, and still, I mean, Phil's a perfect example of can play circles around most guys, but just musical. And you're in the same way. You know, I'll have someone will reference you, and I'm like, do you think Scott could play that? Oh yeah, he could break it down and figure it out and all that. But you know, it's not what you're driven by or whatever, and it's certainly why I think. Look, you got to have a golden groove. You got to have people skills, all that. We know a big part of your success has to do with that. But at the same time, you know, like having that, it just seems endless, you know, to me, that vocabulary. And that kind of stuff, man, that's when a producer who is working, and I know in some cases you've worked with guys forever, you know, where, you know, maybe they want to switch it up, but why? And this guy's got this endless well. And that's awesome stuff. And
you know, Ashley Appling, drummer, great drummer here. He was being very complimentary one day and undeserved. But anyway, I asked him, so what? We were talking about the same kind of thing. What you are so good, Ashley? What is it? I mean, that you like about you were talking about it. So why am I different? I mean, what's the deal? He said it's the salt and pepper. It's the seasoning. It's not the. It's yes, the groove is. It's just something you can't put your finger on. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a great compliment. It's just, so that's more personality, I guess. You know?
I think so. I think yeah.
And I'm not trying to, you know, I don't mean to blow my own horn or anything, but I was just trying to get it. What is it, Ashley? Because I'm no different from anybody else here in town. You know, I'm just.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, there's definitely. I mean, even if you just looked at the workload, that alone is going to put you way in a different place than most people. Like that experience, man, you can't buy that. You know, like you've done so many sessions we might go in and be a little nervous about, you might not be. That alone can set you apart. Playing wise though, there's just something there, like that Picaro, that JR, that Harvey Mason that you have that thing. We'll never probably figure it out.
Well, there's a term that you and I have used on probably half of these shows that it's the answer. He's got incredible musical depth, mm-hmm. and that depth is a combination of all the influences that he's had before in the past, the teaching, the lessons that he's had, and then of course 30 years of studio experience. And it's exactly like you said, man. There's something that you cannot teach, and there's something that you and I cannot accrue from the standpoint that Scott's been doing this for 30 years. And man, every time he hits a backbeat, it's present. It's there.
Yeah,
it's there.
True.
And that's what it is, man. It's golden, man. That is.
Thank you, guys.
That is an intangible that cannot be taught other than you just have to do it, man. And you have to have those sequence of things that happen over a period of time. And that's what builds the vocabulary. And therefore, that's what comes out. That's that musical depth that is present on gigs and recordings, man. That's what it is.
I think too, like, and I've been, you know, right in the middle of some sessions you've done where there's a consistency in your playing, just in velocity and these things that I know you're not thinking about. It's happened, and some of that's probably over time and realizing, mm-hmm. and
right.
It just gets in your brain like, God, I played, I hit the snare drum all wacky, and it never happened again. You're like, I'm not going to let that happen again, you know. But that kind of thing, therein lies something that you might not see, and you take for granted that an engineer, a producer, are going to just be, they're not having to worry about it. you know, another guy with a great groove, a great vibe, but it might be a little inconsistent. You know, those kind of things can really set up. And our heroes, especially studio heroes, we could go look at the Pro Tools tracks of any one of them and probably see that is pretty much consistent throughout everything they do.
But it's part of their feel.
Yeah.
Like, just for yucks, one day I just recorded with Click, just into Pro Tools, and I just looked at where I just my beat naturally fell. Just doing a simple 2 and 4 thing, just 1 and 3, 2 and 4. And my kick is actually ahead slightly, and the snare is slightly back. Interesting. That's just naturally where I laid the beat. And it's like, and I did it, let's try it again, I don't believe it. And it was consistently laid down that way. Very weird.
I would not have thought that. I would have thought kick dead on, snare a little behind. That's what I would have thought.
Kick was slightly ahead. I mean, just like that slight flam.
As far as Click go, you know, I don't know what it was, but somebody like a legend said something once in an interview, like, man, never pull the Click. You know, if anything, chase it. and I swear that's like, I'm like, because I can't play dead on a Click. It's impossible for me, especially my backbeat. I mean, forget it.
So
this guy was like, he was like, man, and now granted, he's coming from probably 6 monsters in a studio and they're laying stuff down.
Right.
You know, it's like, maybe that was part of the influence of that, but it was such an interesting that I don't know if it stuck with me as much as it catered to my natural
That's a new one
feel.
For me. Chase the Click.
Don't be on top of it, because I think he was implying it's easier to start rushing and it getting, as opposed to you can almost mask catching up versus you can't really mask coming back.
Right.
And I think it was kind of such a bizarre.
I think chasing it's going to be. I think it will actually feel better anyway.
More than likely, yeah.
Right.
But I
depends on how much you're chasing. I mean,
You know, I've been known to.
If you put a few car lengths in front of
I've been known to, stop off at the rest area and take relieve myself, but that's a little far. Stay on the road at least, right?
So, Scott, let's talk a little bit about your gear that you use, because
this won't take long.
Because every drummer likes to know what other guys use live and in the studio. And also talk to us about some of your electronics stuff and things that you use in the studio and live as well. But first off, tell us what you're playing right now.
Well, I have the luxury of, when you go studio, man, there's some nice kits in these studios.
House kits.
Right. Usually like 12 Oak's got a nice old Pearl kit, like Maple kit, really nice. Murray Sound's got a nice Gretsch kit over there, really nice. They've got Meinl Bizan stuff. I mean, it's like, so really nice. I mean, you're going to go see some nice kits out there.
A lot of producers have some really nice kits.
Yep. But my go-to stuff is an 80s set of Pearl BLXs I've had forever. And they're just out of the box. I can unpack these things after months not playing them, and they sound great.
Yeah.
I mean, they sound so good. And I got an old set of Ludwigs and some 60s super classics that for vibey stuff. They're really great. I'd like to get a Maple kit one day. John and I've talked for 10 years about that.
You're approaching like Joe Rita status here as far as making a decision.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. So what kind of... on a typical pop rock studio session, you bring, let's say you're using your gear, and you take yours in. What kind of, if you're going to put brand new drum heads on, what do you like? What sounds good to you?
Now, what sounds good on these BLXs I have are clear Emperors, because they bring out a little more of that low end tone I like. I mean, these things will cut forever.
Yeah,
they got that mid range cut, but they can be a little harsh. So the Emperor thicker heads, to me, just take some of that mid-range out and kind of get a little more depth out of them, a little more tone.
What do you put on the bottom?
Right now I've got the Ambassador Clear on the bottom.
Gotcha. And then for your snare drums, I think all of us here at the table, you don't have to preach about Ludwig. We probably got more Ludwig drums than most drum shops have there. What give us a few of your snare drums that you like to take into
my go-to is this Black Beauty that I've had since it's a 6.5 14 from the 70s.
Bronze? No, it's brass.
It's brass. Seamless brass.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's the real 70s one.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So actually,
we couldn't afford it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my parents actually got this. I mentioned the Ludwig set.
Yeah.
It's for my 7th grade birthday. Wow. Mm-hmm. And I found the set underneath the stairs to the basement.
Before
they were hiding
before your birthday?
Yeah, a couple weeks before my birthday. Oh. So my brother plays bass, right? Mm-hmm. We would get the set out and set it up and play it, and we would jam in the basement, and then set it and then put it back. Put it back. Yeah. Yeah. We did this like 10 times before my birthday. So so I think my parents were on to me because the night of my birthday, I mentioned Melvin Hondas earlier, my high school band director. My dad borrowed a tenor sax from Melvin and said, hey, I know you wanted a drum set for your birthday, but we talked to the band director you're going to be seeing next year in 8th grade. And he mentioned that you need to learn a pitched instrument first before you move into the drums. So we got you a saxophone. And I had to play along with this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, thanks. So let's go downstairs and we'll try out. Dad's got his sax. You can try yours, and we'll try it out. We get down there, and there's that 60 set of Ludwig's, beautiful, black diamond pearl, all set up down there.
Yeah.
So they had me. Either they knew it or they were doing that the whole time. But anyway, that set came with a old chrome nickel-plated Superphonic. Mm-hmm. So I traded that one in 75, I think it was, for the Black Beauty at Maestro Music, which was the partner to Metro Music.
Man,
I know you weren't here then. You were probably
before my time.
Bill DeLoach was the Metro guy.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Did he own it or was he manager?
He may have been managing, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Little did you know that drum now is legendary.
A lot of stuff that's been recorded on. So I've got a couple other Ludwig snares, old Acrolite that John sold me. I love that drum. Mm-hmm. Got a DW that's a wood drum that I just couldn't get it to sound right, like tuned up. It just sounded choked. So I just went for this fat thing.
Yeah.
I put some die cast hoops on it, tuned it way down, put a fat head on it, and it sounds like money. I mean, it's in its sweet spot
where it wants to be.
Yeah, it's where it wants to be. Mm-hmm. You know, I put one of those Evans generic heads on it with the holes in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just perfect for that drum, and it's just perfect.
Yeah.
You can hit it right in the middle, and just like you can get those snares at the right tension. You know, if you go beyond, you know how you can tighten beyond, and it gets that tone thing.
Yeah,
that's where it's at. That's where that guy lives.
Man, it's incredible how it'll tell you.
Yeah, totally.
Just sometimes we don't want to listen.
Yeah.
You know, like make something that isn't.
Right.
What about your cymbals? What do you like to play in the studio?
I got a Sweet Ride. I've had a couple of those. Mm-hmm. I've cracked a vintage ride. It was like $400. That was really you know what cracked it? It was playing Worship Rock.
No, you're kidding.
Really? But that was the best ride cymbal I've ever owned. I've never replaced it.
Yeah. CIE, that ride cymbal you had?
Which one?
The one you cracked that you liked?
It was a vintage ride. What are you talking about, the CIE?
Remember that one you had that was like A and C or something like that?
I don't remember that one.
A line Zildjian put out for a minute. It was a good sounding ride, and I think you cracked it. You just blocked it out.
Totally, must have.
Like, no, I didn't. I hated that. So this was an old one you're talking about that you cracked out.
Well, yeah, it's probably. I had it like 10 years. It was, I got it at Atlanta Pro way back, but I paid a lot of money for it.
Mm. Yeah, cymbals are.
But so I got a Sweet Ride is my go-to ride right now. I've got an old rock ride for heavier stuff, but I like the A custom stuff. I mean, it's kind of a cross between stuff that's going to work in the studio and live.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of this dark stuff that people are using, they don't cut live. You know?
Right. Well,
they sound amazing. I mean, I
Of
love
course.
them. They're so beautiful. I mean, they're just ripples on a pond, man. It's just like,
But in so many
beautiful.
settings, they don't work.
Right.
I'm going to ask you a little bit of a tricky question about cymbals. This is John and I had a little segment at the end of a show. We were talking about kind of like qualities in cymbals that we like. You know, in other words, things that sound pleasing to our ears. Which, you know, it's easy a lot of times to go, yeah, I use a 22-inch A custom, or I use a set of 15-inch new beats or whatever. But every set of 15-inch new beats are not created equal, as we all know, right? So, for example, on some of the rides that you were talking about, what are some of the qualities that your ear over all these years have learned to hear? In others, what are some of the qualities of cymbals that you can kind of tell our listeners that this is what you listen for when you're listening for cymbals?
Man, so much of the stuff that I do is a little bit heavier. It's not pingy and jazzy so much, where a lot of the ride stuff that I'm doing is shanking the ride, you know, with the shank of the stick, you know, or not much edge, but just flatten it on top, you know. So I'm listening for the build up, but not like totally washing out where you don't hear the stroke. And the bell is important to me. I like a good bell, man. Some of these really nice dark rides, the bells aren't that great.
Yeah, they're like integrated into the cymbal, and
they kind of just
meant to be.
disappear, you know. So, man, I just still like a good ride cymbal. I mean, a bell.
Yeah.
You know, that's important for me. You know, some of it's the tips. You know, different sticks are going to have a different sound on them. So, I'll try a different couple pair of different weights of sticks and different tips. You know, on a ride too, if I'm going to buy, you know, when I'm trying out a ride.
What do you listen for when you're listening for crashes, really of any size?
That I hate that bell sound. That bang. It's almost a gongy kind of. And I know that's weight.
16-inch medium crash.
Yeah. John and I, we've always talked about that. Anytime you hit a crash that has a predominant pitch that sticks out, it's just immediately get it away.
Right.
Yeah.
And so much of that stuff is the weight of it. But and I know I'm going to pay more in the long run for a cymbal that just has a nice sheen and it's gone, you know, and doesn't have that wong sound to it.
Right.
It's just a nice shimmer and they crack, you know, like that 2-year warranty. They usually crack right around that warranty period. I don't know how they've got it down with
the
that.
25th month.
You're in the 25th. You got the
25th month. You can crack it now.
So what about hats? What do you listen for in hats?
I've got some 15-inch new beats. You mentioned those earlier. I tried out a lot of those. But I love when you just, slight loose, just what kind of crunch am I getting? You know what I mean? If it's kind of a high end, kind of sizzly and low, it's not my thing. I like more of that mid-rangey crunch, so you don't have to just like nail the hi-hat. It's going to stick. You know, a lot of guys mix the hi-hat down. I know it's like, oh, it's got hi-hat over everything. Well, I just play a little bit different, where I want to hear that, and I want that crunchiness. You know, so I just found it in these new beats. You know, they're a little bit heavier, not heavier, a little bit larger, where they're not as bright.
Yeah.
They're a little darker. And man, I just use them those for everything right now.
I think too, hi-hats, there's a feel thing.
Yeah.
They have to feel right, and that's such a weird thing to convey to anyone, because you might like it to feel differently, but if they don't feel right, it's so bizarre. Like
I mentioned the A Customs, I like those crashes a lot. You know, you have to go through them, and because they can be bright, but I did try out some A Custom hats. Man, they were over the top.
Brutal.
Oh my God, I couldn't play them quiet enough. I mean, they were just all over everything. And what a difference. I took those back and got these 15-inch new beats. They sound great.
So as far as the nuts and bolts of recording, we got into some of that, which we appreciate your insight. And just kind of going back on a personal level of like, some projects you've done that you feel represent you well, and what you'd like some people to check out, because I'm going to keep reminding them to do that. So you could help them on their path to appreciating Scott Meeder. What's some records that you've done that you really feel strongly about?
I wrote a couple things down here. Probably a couple tracks. Let's see, that I did a Sugarland thing. Guide You Home was from the Act of Valor movie soundtrack, and I think it sums up. I'm kind of a pop rock guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just my thing, and it's just sort of medium tempo, straight ahead groove. The sounds are really good. Tom Tapley did an incredible job of drum sounds on that record.
Where was it done at?
This one was done at the Quarry, which was this was Murray Sound.
Okay.
Murray Sound.
Yeah.
And Tom Tapley was got drum sounds in that record. So much of it's like it can be an okay track, but if the drum sounds are rocking, it just brings your personality of what you played out even more. So I'm probably just as proud as the drum sounds on that record than I am just a straight ahead groove I did. It was just something that I was proud to be able to be a part of.
And you were involved in tuning and all that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Those are the Gretches.
I was just going to say, was it the Gretches?
With the, I think my hats, the Byzance cymbals, and Black Beauty.
Nice. Yeah. That's a winning combination.
Yeah, the Black Beauty kind of tuned down a little bit with a little bit of a crack in it, with a little bit of ring, that kind of thing. Which I'm about that. Did a contemporary Christian album years ago with Jason Horde, who produced a guy named John Waller.
Who was actually in a band with Jason, I think.
Yeah, according to John. And I've always been kind of proud of that record, just what Jason was able to pull out of me, kind of stretched me a little bit, took me out of the box, because I can be in the box a little bit.
Yeah.
He stretched my plan, did some different things I'd never done, and we got some good stuff.
Awesome.
That's a great record that he did. You've worked with Dan Hannon. I did a country album, a guy named Ricky Gunn a couple years ago. Great experience. We cut that at Blackbird in Nashville, which was a great,
yummy.
Have you ever been on their website and seen their drums?
Yes, of course I have. Oh, it's insane.
Basically, a week before the session, Dan, hey, go on their website and pick out your drums. Really?
I don't have 6 weeks.
If you go to their website, it's stacks of kits. 20 kits.
Everything you could ever
everything. It's just
it's like Drum Paradise or Drum
It's
Doctors,
ridiculous.
and then some.
Yeah, and that's just one dimension. They're that way with every kind of piece of gear in the studio: microphones, keyboards, all that, amps. It's crazy. So
that was that's a great sounding record too, man.
And
I think that that's a great example of what really shows your strengths too, I think.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah. I was able to work, working with Jimmy Lee Sloas playing bass on that record. He's played with everybody. All these country acts up in Nashville.
You've worked with Jimmy before, right?
Yeah, way back. We did a couple things for Phil Nash up in Nashville.
Yeah. That
Phil produced. And he's just unreal. He just takes your playing to a different place. He makes you play different.
Don't
he
you
really
love
does.
that? Yeah, that's a drummer's dream when you got a guy that can do that. So I'd be remiss in not just kind of touching especially for the locals. You were in a band called Tom Gross and the Varsity, which is a legendary band in the Southeast and especially in Atlanta. Kind of had a unique thing in that you were playing almost like a cover band would 5 nights a week, but doing almost all originals. And that was something that, had we not discussed, a lot of people would wear us out about. But your experience in that, looking back, what's your take on that?
Looking back, it was something I took for granted, I think.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the coolest gigs, steady gigs that we had going for years. Probably mid 80s, 84 through 90, 91, something like that. But we would play, Tom Gross, incredible keyboardist, writer, singer. We were doing this stuff that was R&B, jazzy stuff. Just great band. Bill Kaler on sax.
It's still danceable.
Danceable, but yet heady enough to be interesting. and we were playing all original stuff 5-6 nights a week, packing everywhere we played.
Just incredible.
But Atlanta was like that in general, though. You could go any night of the week. I don't want to say it was a drinking age. I mean, it was 18 at the time, but people weren't afraid to go out and watch good music. Now people are kind of afraid to go out a little bit, you know.
Definitely.
But you could just go hear great music any night of the week, and that was a period that we kind of took for granted. Like, man, this made that. If I knew then, man, I don't know what would happen, but it was just a great period to be in Atlanta, to go through all that. And we had a great band, great success locally. We probably were our own worst enemy because we were a little bit too self-indulgent, you know, and enjoying ourselves so much.
Never happens with any band.
You know, it was kind of a weird time in music where, oh, you got to be more commercial, got to be more commercial. Well, what does that mean? You know, so nobody knew what the sound was going to be in the 90s. You know, it was before the Nirvana thing and all that stuff, and
kind of broke it open.
Yeah, the whole 80s thing was coming to an end, and I was playing electronic stuff, kind of a mixed hybrid thing with electronic and acoustic stuff, which people were going to. The acoustic thing was coming back, you know, so we were kind of in transition, but we're talking about doing a reunion, so.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That'd be amazing. People will show up in droves, I think.
It'd be awesome.
Anything else you'd like to add? You know, you want to talk about your awesome son's baseball career? Or... Sorry, guys. I had to get some sports in there just because I'm a button pusher like that. Anyway.
Man, I'd like to. I don't know. You mentioned the guys coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you know what are they looking for? What's some advice you can give them? I would say find your niche. You know, whatever that is. You know, for me, it was just, you know, the way I put a backbeat in there. I don't know, but. And working with people, my ability to work with people, I think it was a niche I had, you know, in production ideas and arrangement ideas maybe. But I don't know, there's so many great players here now. And I also, as far as recording, I think Pro Tools has gotten us lazy a little bit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, playing with the Click helped me so much in the studio. Because with Tom Gross and the Varsity, we played with Click on loops, pretty much 90% of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped me in the studio just make that transition. But I think now we've become, I find myself guilty of it. Oh, Pro Tools will fix it later.
Good. Yeah.
It's close enough. They just want the part, right? Man, that's just, I don't know. You're not honing your craft, man. Just. These kids, I think the younger guys just hone their craft now. Don't just be satisfied with, you know, being one-dimensional musically as well. Listen to all kinds of different stuff. I mean, there's some great drummers in these churches, but don't let the and believe me, I've grown spiritually and relationship. I think it's been a great experience playing North Point, but don't let that be your only musical dimension.
Yeah, it's a bubble that it's going to stunt your growth in a lot of ways.
Right.
If you don't, yeah, that's.
I mean, there's so much
insight.
positive about it.
Of course.
But just musically, if you're doing this full time and want to do it in all aspects, man, just get more well-rounded. Just the stuff that my history, high school, All-State, all that stuff, Jack Bell, kind of was a whole foundation for all that. So get as much experience as you can. Don't rely on Pro Tools, you know.
Awesome.
Hone it.
Grow. Just reach for new things.
Right.
It's easy to get complacent, that's for sure.
I'm delighted, John.
We cornered Scott Meeder. He had to talk about himself.
So listeners,
I'm done. My career's complete.
Well, we're going to do part 2 next week. No, Scott, it's been.
We'll talk about my landscaping gig next week. Okay.
I like it.
Hey, man, I'm fascinated with that, man. I really am. I think it's fantastic. That's another passion.
Danny
of yours.
Grady told me, great guitar player, Scott, rock and roll is a young man's game. And if anybody is a rock and roller, it's Danny Grady.
No doubt.
And he has influenced me. He's still doing the music thing, but he's got a great computer programming thing he's doing. I mean, he's just making great money, but he's still got the music thing. So as I've gotten up here in years a little bit, you know, I've always loved the escape from music I get when I'm doing work in the yard, doing different things in the yard, like designing stuff. And it's a creativity that's an outlet for me. And I can solve all the world's problems as well when you're cutting grass, right?
Well, solve this problem for you. How do I make thin blade Kentucky fescue grow in Atlanta?
You plant zoysia.
That's it. There you go. There's the answer. I couldn't be happier, man.
Awesome. We sure appreciate it, Scott.
Man, it's my pleasure. I've enjoyed this, and I'm finding out some stuff about me I didn't know. So,
well, let me tell you, guys, we're so happy to bring Scott to you. There's never been a guy that's in more need of wider recognition to this to just the drumming and musical community. Guarantee you've heard this guy before and you just didn't know it. And now, you know, what we're going to do is when we get this show published is please go over to our YouTube page also. We're going to give you some examples of his playing. We're going to find some stuff and put it up there for you so you can hear him.
Dig it out of the bowels of the internet.
The worldwide internet.
I hear there's some delightful clips of Tom Gross and the Varsity.
Oh, there could be.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get some of that. We're gonna get some of those on there.
I had hair then, by the way.
Right on, man. Yeah. I think we all had hair then. But guys, anyway, thanks so much for listening to the show. As always, we value your comments and we value your emails and questions. Feel free to give us a shout. You can contact us at our email address, drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com. You can find us online at our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast. And you can tweet us as long as it's not nasty. We've been getting some of those. We hear you. Twitter.com/DW Groovecast.
Just wait till I hear this.
Anyway, that's all we got this week. Thanks again to Scott Meeder.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man.
We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.